Well, in our great quest across the Psalms, we have come to today Psalm 42. Let us venture across it and discover its treasures. Psalm 42 was written by David, and in terms of our New Testament references, not aware of any New Testament references to Psalm 42. By the way, if you want this free PDF on the screen, you can download it on our website. We now descend to talk about our themes and our definitions too in each category. The first theme we will be discussing is fighting for faith when you've lost your joy. And then the second one is the power of reminding yourself of God's past faithfulness and the way that that affects your faith in the present. Now, our two definitions. The first one is maskil, and this appears in kind of the introductory note in verse 1. The exact meaning of this term is unknown, and it remains unknown even in the present day. It may have been a musical indicator, this is what some people think, telling the musician or the performer of the psalm how it was supposed to be presented. And then other people think that the term indicates a psalm that was written specifically to impart some kind of wisdom. So quite a range of different ideas about what this term could mean. But just know that it's not exactly known what it means currently. Okay, and then breakers. You might know this one if you live by the ocean. If you're from Ohio, like me, it might be a little less familiar to you. Breakers appears in verse 7. These are strong ocean waves that break up into white foam when they hit the shore. Okay, so Psalm 42, I've got one section, verses 1 through 11. Hope in God. This is what David is trying to convince himself of, to put his hope in God. In Psalm 42, David was preaching to himself, essentially, preaching to his own soul that was downcast, and he was preaching about God's faithfulness. He was resisting the temptation to believe the lie that God had abandoned him. I think Satan wants us all to believe that lie, that God isn't with us, he's not helping us, he's left us, he's abandoned us, he's forgotten about us, right? And David's trying to convince himself that is a lie, and I'm not believing that. The psalm starts with the now famous words, quote, "As the deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God." If you've ever heard the hymn, "As the deer," that's where those words come from. Now you know. David longed to feel that God was near him, but he was in this season where God felt distant. He writes this, quote, "My tears have been my food day and night, while they say to me all the day long, 'Where is your God?'" So David's enemies once again were pressing in on him, mocking him this time for his God seemingly not helping him. He felt battered by the continual waves of trouble that flowed over him, and that's where we see that word breakers that we defined in the definition section. He reminded himself of the joy that he had previously found in God, and he reminisced about times when he used to lead the people to the tabernacle or to the house of God in processions of praise and songs and worship. So he reminds himself, hope in God. Even though things are bleak at the moment, hope in God. And then he makes this expression of faith that God is once again going to be his source of salvation. He has confidence in this. David concludes the psalm with these words of hope. Quote, "Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God." So that is Psalm 42. Keep those words in mind because they are going to be pretty much repeated in Psalm 43, which we'll talk about, Lord willing, tomorrow. All right, so let's talk application now. In Psalm 42, we see David's internal struggle. He has to fight to find joy in God. And I think any true follower of God is going to experience something similar somewhere in their life, sometime along the timeline of your life and your walk with Jesus. There will be times when you despair in your faith, when joy has to be fought for, when you have to preach God's goodness to yourself because trust doesn't overflow easily or naturally. So in those moments, we can learn a lot from David. Remind yourself, preach to yourself about God's goodness to you in the past, all of his blessings, all the times that he's delivered you, all the times that he didn't abandon you, even though you deserved it. But in those moments, remind yourself of all the things that God has done for you, but also remind yourself of the good things and the faithfulness that he's shown to other people. Now, those may be people that you're immediately familiar with in your own life in the modern day, but That's part of the reason that the scriptures were given to us, to tell us and to record God's faithfulness to other people throughout history. He will have a much harder time convincing you to abandon the hope of your faith if your mind can recall 50 stories from the scriptures that tell of God's faithfulness. So why do we study the Old Testament? Why do we study the stories of David? Why do we study all these stories about the kings and the chronicles and the prophets and all these people? Well, part of it is so that our mind can call back to these when we run into similar situations, right? There's principles that we can take from this that definitely can be applied into our lives and make our faith stronger. And when Satan comes threatening us, we're going to be better prepared for it because God has equipped us with all of these stories of his greatness in the past. So if you don't know any of the stories in the scriptures, now is the time to learn them so that your armor is ready when Satan launches his attack. So that's what we're doing here in this Bible study. And so if you're just jumping in here and you haven't done the previous studies, there's tons and tons of good lessons and applications from those studies. So the more that you can familiarize yourself with the scriptures, the stronger your faith will be. This isn't some kind of just mental, scholarly, academic exercise that has no application in the real world. It has direct application to our fight for joy and faith in God.